Near the Great Pyramid at Giza, Egypt, stands the enormous 4,500-year-old limestone figure known as the Great Sphinx of Giza. One of the greatest structures on Earth, the Great Sphinx is 66 feet tall and 240 feet long. Although the history and origins of this enormous edifice is still up for question, it is one of the most well-known remains of the ancient Egyptians. But there is a lot about this giant structure that remains a mystery. Join us today as we reveal to you the 12 strangest mysteries of the ancient Egyptian Sphinx that are going to baffle you. Number 12. Who built the Sphinx? Scholars and historians remain in disagreement over who had the Sphinx of Giza carved and when it was created, but all agree that it's one of the most impressive pieces of work and remains one of the largest sculptures in the world. Many theories have been put forward in an attempt to answer these questions, but few come close to responding to these questions, leading to the riddle of the Sphinx. Archaeologists have estimated that if one laborer carved a cubic foot of stone in a week, then the Sphinx was completed by 100 people in 3 years at this rate using stone hammers and copper chisels. The archaeological evidence suggests that the Great Sphinx was created around 2500 BC for the pharaoh Khafre, the builder of the second pyramid at Giza. The Sphinx is a monolith carved from the bedrock of the plateau, which also served as the quarry for the pyramids and other monuments in the area. The Great Sphinx is among the world's largest sculptures and features a lion's body and a human head adorned with a royal headdress. The statue was carved from a single piece of limestone, and pigment residue suggests that the entire Great Sphinx was once painted. The Sphinx of Giza is credited to Khafre because the face of the statue resembles his face. Some theories suggest that Khafre intended to create a pyramid and not a statue, but opted for a statue when the large mass of rock was considered unsuitable for the construction of a pyramid complex. All things considered, it would seem that Khafre deserves the credit for constructing the Sphinx, which is the world's most magnificent statue. However, we must always keep in mind that there is not a single contemporary inscription that connects the Sphinx with Khafre. So unless some solid evidence may appear, we cannot say for sure who is responsible for the creation of the colossal structure. Number 11. Secret spaces. Many researchers believe that there is a secret chamber under the statue and underground tunnels, and they have been proven right. In 1998, Zahi Hawass, chief director of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, undertook excavations beneath the main body of the Sphinx at Giza and rediscovered access tunnels to several large, apparently natural caves directly under the Sphinx. There was evidence of earlier ancient excavations. There are a number of known passages, holes, tunnels, and chambers inside the Giza Sphinx. Some are of known origin, but others are not. There is a hole in the back of the Sphinx about 4 feet behind the head. It was made by Howard Weiss in the 1840s and has been dubbed Perring's Hole after his engineer. Seeking chambers, Weiss bored a hole 27 feet deep, but the drill rod became stuck. He tried using gunpowder to remove the rod, but gave up so as not to do further damage to the Sphinx. The cavity Weiss created was cleared in 1978 by Zahi Hawass, and inside it he found a part of the Sphinx headdress. There is also an iron trap door fitted to the ground within the Sphinx pores between the Thutmose, the fourth dream stele, and the chest of the Sphinx. This is not a passage, but rather a somewhat rectangular pit that was covered with a cement roof and iron beam, then sealed with a trap door as part of a restoration effort in the 1920s. Most of the chambers and tunnels in the Sphinx are not known, and very little information is available about the ones that have been discovered. Number 10. The Dream Stele. The Dream Stele, also called the Sphinx Stele, is an epigraphic stele erected between the front paws of the Great Sphinx of Giza by the ancient Egyptian pharaoh Thutmose IV during the 18th dynasty. Thutmose IV put it there to immortalize a deal he made with the colossal statue when he was a young prince, but not the crown prince. The ancient Giza plateau was a playground for the young King Thutmose, who came here for lion hunts, chariot races, and target practice. Around midday, Thutmose would seek refuge from the sun's glare by taking a nap in the Great Sphinx's shady embrace. While he slept, the Sphinx appeared to Thutmose in a dream and made him a deal that the ambitious young royal couldn't refuse. Although he wasn't next in line, the Sphinx promised Thutmose the throne if he freed the great statue from the desert sand. Back then, the Sphinx was buried in the sand and was visible from the neck only, and according to the writings, the statue told Thutmose that he would become the pharaoh if he were to uncover the whole statue. We We don't know what happened to Thutmose's older brother, but we can only suppose that the prince held up his end of the deal because he did, in due course, become King Thutmose IV. Number 9. The Egyptian God of the Dead. There have been many theories regarding the giant head of the Sphinx. According to one theory, the head of the Sphinx doesn't represent a human face, but a lion because, to early Egyptians, the lion was a much more potent symbol of power than the human face. Whether it was due to the erosion of soft limestone or for political reasons, supporters of the lion head theory argue that the Great Sphinx was remodeled to have the face of a man, possibly by a pharaoh, an act that reduced the overall size of its head significantly. Yet another theory, somewhat less widely supported but far more interesting, holds that the Great Sphinx head was indeed originally that of an animal, but not of a lion. It was originally a dog and represented the Egyptian god of the dead, Anubis. As Robert Temple observes, the body of the Sphinx is not feline, as lions are known for a back that is curved and possessing a mane that is absent on the Sphinx. Rather, the body is in the shape of a crouching dog. And there is much circumstantial evidence to support this theory. First, Anubis is the god of the dead and is believed to protect the deceased and to prevent the unworthy from crossing the River Nile to the underworld, as the role played by the guard dog Cerberus in Greek mythology. In addition, following the Book of the Dead, a statue of Anubis was used in rituals to do with the deceased, specifically the washing of the parts of the deceased body that had been placed in the 4 canopic jars. And this might also explain why the Sphinx enclosure might have been a moat filled with water for the ritual washing of the pharaoh's body. Equally, seeing that Anubis was the god of embalming, one could argue whether the embalming of a or several pharaohs, therefore, occurred in the so-called Sphinx temple. The best-known image of Anubis is the Anubis statue found inside the tomb of King Tutankhamun, which shows him as a crouching dog. If the head of the statue was originally that of a pointy-eared jackal, as Anubis is often portrayed, then it supports the notion that erosion eventually ruined its ears and maybe its snout. The pharaohs then sought to restore the statue and remodeled it to have the head of a man, transforming it into the popular mythical figure, the Sphinx, but no one knows for sure. Number 8. Hall of Records below the Sphinx. Legend has it that there is a maze below the pores of the Sphinx that leads to the mystery-shrouded Hall of Records, where all essential knowledge of alchemy, astronomy, mathematics, magic, and medicine is stored, and researchers have been trying to find it. The burial chambers in the Pyramid of Teti and Saqqara bear testimony to the fact that the pharaohs were given the knowledge to take with them. Encrypted hieroglyphic messages tell of the king's ascension to heaven and his rule in the next world. Magical spells about ores that will breathe new life into the pharaoh are enshrined here. In the modern era, the search for the Hall of Records began in the wake of the prophecies of American faith healer Edgar Cayce. He went into a trance and talked of a Hall of Records where ancient civilization's wisdom was kept. At the time, he thought he was the reborn high priest of Atlantis. He claimed that the room could be accessed through a doorway in the Sphinx's right front paw. To this day, people have been trying to prove the truth of this spiritual epiphany. Multiple expeditions were launched in an attempt to map out the Hall of Records' precise layout. It's been over 30 years since a team of American scientists took a giant drill to the Sphinx. A 7-meter-deep hole was drilled into the stone paw. Even though they had approval from the highest levels of government, these trials continue to spark heated debate. They nearly destroyed the monument. They did not come across the predicted tunnel. The Egyptian authority responsible for ancient monuments has forbidden any further detonation or drilling. But for those who continue to champion the truth of Cayce's theory, this is a conspiracy theory on the part of the archaeological establishment. Myth or reality, the Sphinx remains a stony puzzle. Number 7. The broken nose of the Sphinx. Several stories have been created and spread purporting to reveal who broke the Sphinx's nose. The star of those stories is Napoleon Bonaparte. It is believed that the Sphinx's nose was broken during one of the French military battles near Giza during the French campaign in Egypt in 1798. However, a mid-18th century drawing of the Sphinx by Danish naval captain and explorer Frederick Louis Norden depicts the statue without a nose. Since this predates Napoleon's army, it disproves the folktale. Another prediction, according to the Egyptian Arab historian al-Makrizi in the 15th century, was that the nose was actually destroyed by a Sufi Muslim named Muhammad Sa'im al-Dar. In 1378 CE, Egyptian peasants made offerings to the Great Sphinx in the hope of controlling the flood cycle, which would result in a successful harvest. Outraged by this blatant show of devotion, Sa'im al-Dar destroyed the nose and was later executed for vandalism. The same historian also said that local people believed that the increased sand covering the Giza Plateau was celestial revenge for the act of defacement. Some later believed that the Alexandrian Crusade of 1365 was punishment for the nose being broken off. In spite of the conjecture surrounding the Sphinx's nose, one fact is certain. Archaeologist Mark Lenner performed an archaeological study on the Sphinx and concluded that its nose was intentionally broken with instruments sometime between the 3rd and 10th centuries AD. But what is more interesting about the Sphinx is that the nose is not the only missing part of the giant statue. It is thought that a ceremonial pharaonic beard was attached to the Sphinx sometime after it was originally constructed. It is thought to have been added later because it didn't damage the core infrastructure of the Sphinx when it fell off. There are also a number of holes in the Sphinx, including at the top of its head, and many New Kingdom stelae depict the Sphinx wearing a crown. As a result, it has been theorized that the hole could have been its anchoring point. But in the end, these are just theories with no solid explanation. Number 6. How did the Sphinx originally look? The Sphinx is located on the Giza Plateau on the west bank of the River Nile, around a half-hour drive west of Cairo. It is the largest surviving statue from the ancient world. For years, Egyptian rulers worshipped this mysterious Sphinx as a powerful form of the sun god. But it hasn't always been the delightful tan color it is today. In fact, it is thought that once upon a time, the Great Sphinx would have been painted a primary palette in comic book red, blue, and yellow. The face was probably a russet red and the headdress was very likely canary yellow. The residual red paint on one of the Sphinx's ears can still be seen on the statue. Over the past 4,500 years, weather and erosion have taken their toll on the Great Sphinx. It is really amazing that so much of it is left for us to see. The original Sphinx would have looked a lot different. Archaeologists think that the face and body were painted red, the beard was blue, and much of the headdress was yellow. Unfortunately, the original shape and color of the Sphinx cannot be seen today, but researchers believe the colors existed in the past. Number 5. It's based on a mythological creature. While a lot of debate is done on whether the Sphinx has the head of a dog, a human, or a lion, one thing is sure: it is based on a mythological creature. A Sphinx is a mythological creature with the body of a lion and the head of a human, prominent in Egyptian, Asian, and Greek mythology. In Egypt, the Sphinx was often depicted as a male with a pharaoh headdress. Unlike the ancient Egyptian Sphinx, the Asian and Greek Sphinx has eagle wings and is usually female. The ancient Egyptians never actually referred to the statue as the Great Sphinx. Texts from around 1400 BCE refer to it as a statue of Kepi. For years after this, the Great Sphinx remained buried under the sand. Later, Thutmose IV unknowingly fell asleep on top of it and dreamt that a god called Horem Arket Kepri Riatum told him to free the Sphinx from beneath the sand and he would become ruler. After this, the Sphinx became Horem Arket. The next mention of it is during the medieval period, when it is referred to as Balhib and Bilhor. During the 18th dynasty, it was called Horus of the Horizon and Horus of the Necropolis, the sun god that stands above the horizon. In later times, many Sphinx images were carved in smaller sizes or in cameos with the faces of the reigning monarchs. Number 4. How old is the Sphinx? For years, Egyptologists and archaeologists have thought that the Great Sphinx of Giza to be about 4,500 years old, dating to around 2500 BC. However, some recent studies have suggested that the Sphinx was built as long ago as 7000 BC. The relatively new theory is based on what is thought to be precipitation-induced weathering on the upper areas of the Sphinx. Archaeologists supporting this view contend that the last time there was sufficient precipitation in the region to cause this pattern of rainfall erosion on limestone was around 9,000 years ago, 7000 BC. More traditional Egyptologists reject this view for several reasons. First, a Sphinx built earlier than 7000 BC would upset our understanding of ancient civilization, as there is no evidence of an Egyptian civilization this old. Also, the new theory focuses only on a specific type of erosion and ignores other evidence that would support an age of 4,500 years. Among these, the Sphinx is a rapidly weathering structure appearing older than it is. Subsurface water drainage or Nile flooding could have produced the pattern of erosion, and the Sphinx is believed to resemble Khafre, the pharaoh who built one of the nearby pyramids of Giza. He lived from 2603 to 2578 BC. While it's exciting to contemplate the existence of an unknown civilization that predates the ancient Egyptians, most archaeologists and geologists still favor the traditional view that the Sphinx is about 4,500 years old. Number 3. The Sphinx was never truly completed. A number of findings suggest that the Sphinx was originally intended to be an even greater accomplishment than that which we see today. American archaeologist Mark Lenner and Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass discovered large stone blocks, toolkits, and even lunches apparently abandoned midway through a workday, which hints that the construction process stopped before completion. Not only this, the laborers who constructed the statue ate like kings. Most scientists' initial assumption was that the men who toiled to bring the Sphinx to life belonged to an enslaved caste. However, their diets would suggest otherwise. Lenner's excavations revealed that the statue's laborers regularly dined on luxurious cuts of prime beef, sheep, and goat meat, which is a very fascinating thing considering we have always imagined such great monuments built by the enslaved class that was ruled upon by cruel leaders. Number 2. The Sphinx is the focus of a few astronomical theories. The enigma of the Great Sphinx of Giza has made it a key part of a number of theories about the ancient Egyptians' supernatural comprehension of extraterrestrial matters. Some scholars, such as Lena, have discussed the Sphinx's involvement alongside the pyramids of the Giza necropolis in a massive power-harnessing machine meant to digest energy from the sun. Another theory, propagated chiefly by British writer Graham Hancock, notes an alignment of the Sphinx, the pyramids, and the Nile River with the stars of the constellations Leo and Orion and the Milky Way. To explain this further, the Egyptians believed that the gods lived in the Duat, the kingdom of Osiris. It is located in the region of the sky where Orion and Sirius rise heliacally just ahead of the sun at dawn on the summer solstice. Some Egyptologists have proposed that the Giza Plaza mirrors the Duat with its 3 large pyramids, the Sphinx, and the Nile. The 3 pyramids represent the 3 stars in the belt of Orion, the Sphinx corresponds to the constellation Leo, and the Nile corresponds to the Milky Way. The concept of creating a sacred landscape on Earth that reflects the night sky is not uncommon in other ancient cultures. By building pyramids, temples, and tombs aligned with the stars and the Earth's cardinal points, ancient people venerated their gods, bringing divine energy to the Earth, which prevented the world from falling into chaos. Each theory has encountered its share of skepticism, but with a statue as mysterious as the Great Sphinx, the speculation isn't likely to stop anytime soon. Number 1. Why is it called Sphinx? It has been confirmed that the ancient Egyptians referred to the Sphinx in the ancient state about 4,500 years ago as the roti, a sacred symbol to them in the form of a lion whose duty is protection. In the era of the modern state, the Egyptians called the Sphinx a name which means Horus, falcon, on the horizon. The ancient Egyptians were able to show the statue representing the god Horus between the pyramid of Khufu and Khafra, or between the 2 horizons. The name was later changed to Hor-Mar-Case. In the era of the Middle State, the word Shesab Ankh meant the living image, and it was another name for the Sphinx. Perhaps the name Sphinx is a misrepresentation of the name Sheshank. The statue is depicted on the dream plate, which is located between the Sphinx creatures as the anus of Ankh, that is, the image of the living statue. As for the name of the statue in Arabic, Sphinx is a distortion of the pharaonic name Bar Hall or Bow Hall, which means the place, house, or sanctuary of the falcon Horus, a symbol of royalty in ancient Egypt. When Arabs came to Egypt, they changed the language and the name became Abu Hall, which means in English, Sphinx. The name of the Sphinx went through many changes. Now it is simply called the Egyptian Sphinx.